Early results in Romania give hard-right nationalist candidate George Simion the lead in the first round of a rerun of the presidential election. Two centrist candidates are vying for second place and a spot in a likely runoff on May 18th. Simion is projected to get around one-third of the vote in the first round. He's positioned himself as more moderate than the far-right pro-Russian candidate who won in the election that was annulled over allegations of campaign fraud. And we have DW's Anchal Vohra reporting from Bucharest with the very latest. Tell us first more about these results coming in.
First I've got to tell you that we are inside the Romanian Parliament, right outside the office of George Simion. The mood here is quite upbeat. Just a few minutes ago, I saw him walking around here, his hand around the shoulder of one of his colleagues, who seeming quite relaxed. The results are on expected lines. George Simion is leading, and the two candidates who are trailing him are centrist candidate. One of them, though, is being described here as an establishment man because he's been backed by the centre-left party and the centre-right party. The other, however, is an independent, but he seemed to have support broadly in urban areas.
And what are the lead candidates in this race promising voters?
So we've spoken to George Simion, and he opposes aid for Ukraine. That's could be a big concern for the EU if he does win the second round. He, over the last few hours, I don't know how many times he's mentioned the name of American President Donald Trump. He really seems to be drawing a link there between him and Donald Trump. He said that his party is the most Trumpist party, that his party is aligned with MAGA ideology completely. Whereas Nicu Șordan, who is the independent candidate, the former mayor of Bucharest, who seems to have an appeal in urban areas, he seems to be pro-Ukraine. He's warned against Simon's victory and has said this could jeopardize EU's rearmament plans. It could jeopardize Europe's aid to Ukraine. So he's completely on the other side here.
And just give us a sense of which issues were big in these campaigns and what led voters toward supporting the far right in Romania.
Well, you know, a lot of people we've spoken to today, and nearly all of them brought up inflation, and they brought up the fear that Ukrainian war may spill over. So these two were broad concerns, but there's something that people we spoke to on whichever party they were backing, whichever candidate they were backing, they were all essentially opposed to the establishment. They want an anti-establishment face. And in last elections, we saw the surprise candidate, Călin Georgescu, appear out of nowhere. And a lot of experts we've been talking to here say that he won, amongst other reasons, there were allegations of digital pushing of some of his content on TikTok as well. However, experts say that he won because he was a surprise candidate, an anti-establishment face. And that's the feeling that Simion is tapping into.
DW's Anchal Vohra reporting for us from Bucharest. Now, as she mentioned, Anchal spoke to George Simion earlier, and in their interview, she asked him if he wanted Romania to have a closer relationship to the United States than to the European Union.
We have three pillars at the basis of our security strategy: 1, member of EU; 2, member of NATO; and 3, a strategic partnership with the US. We need all three of this. We'll have a strong voice inside the EU. We'll have the same stances as our leader of the ECR, Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. And we cannot go by ourselves regarding the economy. So the European Union is mainly an economic alliance. We want to enforce this alliance, and we want to create prosperity, not poverty, like the current EU Commission is doing.
You said you don't agree with Ursula von der Leyen's policies. Which policies?
Green Deal policies, the policies regarding cultural aspects. We are a socially conservative people, and we want to raise our children as the parents wish, not as the state or the EU Commission wants. We don't want any gender or mutilation for our children imposed by the EU Commission.
The EU Commission is not saying that?
Of course it's not saying. The globalist current that is promoting this kind of stuff is not having policies that are appreciated here. The EU Commission should not meddle with the policies regarding cultural and sexual aspects.
You also said that you'd oppose aid to Ukraine. Why is that? Ukraine is your neighbor.
We said we will promote peace, and we see the only solution by de-escalating this conflict. Helping with guns the two sides is not beneficiary for Germany, for France, and for Romania and Poland. We were very affected by this war, and we need peace as the Trump administration wants.
Now, earlier, I also spoke to Alina Mungiu-Pippidi, a Romanian political scientist and professor at the Luis University in Rome. Here are her analysis on Simion's remarks.
Well, I think Mr. Simion was frank enough. He is a successful political entrepreneur who got where he is by putting together some deep tendencies from rural Romania as well as broader Eastern Europe, because people think that we have a very clear and definite border between Eastern Europe and Russia. But in fact, we don't. There are values that we share, for instance, the socially conservative values that Mr. Simion alluded to. There is a certain parochialism that we share. We are rural people. In other words, the Eastern Europe who took the historical opportunity to join the European Union, joined the European Union with only a part of European population. The other still remains a deep rural East European population. Romania had the highest rate of non-vaccinated people in the entire European Union. And this is like the domestic element that Mr. Simion got to, and the rest is his successful political entrepreneurship in connecting this with MAGA, United States, and this window of opportunity which opened after November.
Indeed, he has said he hopes to become Romania's MAGA president, of course, referring to the followers of Donald Trump in the U.S. What would his victory mean for relations with the EU?
So I think it is, however we look at it, it is bad news for EU, and it is bad news for Romania. I'd like to say that just one thing, that such a big-scale disaster does not happen only due to successful political entrepreneurship of one man, regardless of how talented he is, and Mr. Simion definitely has a certain talent, but also due to the ineptitude of Romanian government parties, which did not govern so badly because they were in a favorable context, but they despised the voters, they relied extensively on secret service and in controlling the media and in screening reality, in particular in relation to the war in Ukraine. And what happened is that most of the public opinion moved on social media, and on social media, various entrepreneurs, Russia, in part, but not only Russia, a variety of groups which were got together after vaccine, took towards other directions. And these directions are not Romanians only. I mean, you can see this kind of trends all around Europe against the Green Deal, against helping Ukraine if this actually means that Ukrainians can sell their grain, which is subsidized, and which is genetically modified in the European market, to the loss of Romanian or Polish farmers who, in principle, we support Ukraine. In principle, Romanians are very much anti-Russian, but as long as this does not affect us directly. And I think it will be a lot of more critical stance. Simion is going to be also an entrepreneur at the European scale. Right now, he's like a small boy who just tried to, go under the skirts of Mrs. Meloni to win his role as a small page in the European radical parties. But he will be in the future someone to create a lot of problem because he has imagination. He's a political activist. He will come up with a variety of things which will clearly embarrass the European establishment. So It's like Viktor Orban, if you want. These people do not want Europe to disappear. They want to steer Europe in their direction.
We can now speak to Oana-Valentina Suciu. She's a professor of political science at the University of Bucharest. Professor Suciu, welcome to DW. So as we saw in that report, this election comes after one of the most turbulent political years in Romania's recent history. So with this rerun, are voters turning up re-energized, or is there more skepticism in the air when it comes to the democratic process?
Good afternoon. It is hard to say since we don't really have public data coming from surveys. But what I can tell you up to this very hour is that apparently the Romanian electorate, especially the one residing abroad, is voting massively. Compared with the previous election round, the one that had been cancelled in December 2024, we can see since last evening a 300% increase in the vote of the diasporan Romanian citizens. Why is this important? Because there are something like 6 million Romanian citizens living abroad, and usually in the presidential elections in the last 20 years, it was exactly this type of vote that eventually gave the winner in the electoral race, both in the first and in the second round.
Well, as we've mentioned, the hardline nationalist candidates such as George Simion are polling very strongly. Why is that?
Because they come to meet some of the expectations of a large part of the electorate, both in Romania and abroad, a part of the electorate that has been neglected in the last few decades by all the political parties and all the political representatives, irrespective of the part of the political spectrum that they come from. So when a candidate such as the far-right George Simion pays attention to this part of the electorate, who is worried by the basic needs, meeting their basic daily needs, and being the first politician to do that, we're not talking here if he really has solutions, not to mention that looking into economic or social policies does not fall into the constitutional attributes of the president of Romania. Nevertheless, when such a politician pays attention to this part of the electorate and offers what looks like a simple solution to their daily problems, of course, they head towards what seems to meet their grievances that have been neglected by the body politic in the last decades.
All right. So if indeed a hardline right-wing candidate does become president of Romania, what would this mean to Romania's critical role on NATO's eastern flank?
It is difficult to say, but it's definitely not going to be a positive effect, since one cannot really rely on the statements that we have seen in your material, Simion statements, that he is going to support Romania being an important player in the NATO alliance, since many of his interventions, not only during the electoral campaign, actually were speaking about leaving NATO and leaving the European Union.
That was Oana-Valentina Suciu,
So
professor of
it's
political...
going to be bad, basically.
All right. That was Oana-Valentina Suciu, professor of political science, University of Bucharest. Many thanks indeed.